Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Rick out at the NJP Ranch, doing something a little bit different today. Of course, I've made some model railroading videos on here, quite a few of them in fact, but now I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm building a T-Trak N Scale module for use in T-Trak layouts, and there are certain standards that you have to stick with on T-Trak, so bear with me. And I do have to apologize to you right off the top, as I don't have any video footage of this. Fat Boy here was just too lazy to set up a video camera out there, so no video, no moving pictures, but I did get a lot of still pictures, so we'll take those and talk through them as we go through the slideshow, so to speak here. So this is what I'm doing on T-Trak. I'm building a small module. Actually, I built 3 of them. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But the main module I'm working on is 12 1/8 inches wide by 9 3/8 inches deep. Now, the depth on those can be anything from like, I think 8 inches is the minimum, and I think you can go up to 14 inches deep on those. So there is you're kind of wide open as to how deep you want to make your module. The height is pretty much cast in stone. You have to set that at 2 3/4 inches. That's your height from the base to the top of the board. And the width, now this is where it gets a little interesting. The narrowest one is 12 1/8 inches. So that's 12 1/8 inches wide. The next one is 24 1/4. So you add 1/8 of an inch to it. So it's 24 1/4. The next one's 36 3/8. And the longest one that's really practical for T-Trak is the 48 inch, and that's 48 1/2 inches. You can make them bigger, and I don't think it's really highly encouraged in the T-Trak community because of portability issues and stuff. Okay, so what we look at here is my module that I built is a 12 1/8 by 9 3/8. So this is the way the dimensions work on this. The standard is that you have to have this 1 1/2 inches to the edge of the ballast of the track, the edge of the track itself, from the front of the board or front of the module to the edge of the track is 1 1/2 inches. Then the next dimension that you have to stick with to keep it within T-Trak standards is 33 millimeters center line to center line on the tracks. So it's really easy to measure that out if you have one of the N Scale Kato re-railers. Those have slots in them that are actually spaced perfectly at 33 millimeter spacing for the tracks. So very easy to set that up. The most critical ones you have to set up is the 1.5 inch from the front of your module. Once you have that in there, whatever means you need to take to get to 33 millimeter track spacing is pretty much wide open from there. All right, moving on to the construction phase of things here. This is how I had it laid out on the top of the table saw, basically. I'm using it as a workbench here. 1/2 inch by 2.5 inch red oak. And I had some panels laying around, so I basically ripped them down to 2.5 inches wide. And the leftovers is what I used on the ends. They're not quite 2.5 inches, but they'll work just fine. So the front and rear rails are 12.125, 12 1/8 inches. And cut 2 of those, of course. And the end pieces are 8 3/8. And the reason they're 8 3/8 instead of 9 3/8 is because each front and rear rail is 1/2 inch thick. So that makes up for it and make it 9 3/8 inches. Now we stick it in the clamps, put some glue on the ends, and in order to help the glue, I stuck some screws in there, and I did some pre-drilling and put the screws in there. And so it's screwed and glued all together at the same time. Next, it's time to put the top on, and what I did with this is I ran a bead of glue around the top of the framework, and then I laid the top on top of it, squaring everything up and making sure all the edges were flush and lined up perfectly fine on it, and took the air nailer out and put some brads in there to hold it in place until the glue sets up. Now you'll notice the end of it is kind of inset a little bit. I kind of designed it that way. I'm not sure exactly why I did it that way, but it's not really going to hurt anything as far as the module goes. It'll still work perfectly fine. There was one more thing I wanted to do to this, though, so I wanted to put some feeties on there to adjust the height of it. So what I did is I took some pieces of red oak and cut them down to 3 inches long, drilled some deep holes in them, put T-nuts in them, and what I'll do is I'll thread some 1/4 screws into those, and that'll be my height adjuster to level it up when it's time to bring it out to a show or hook it up in another module and make sure it can match up with other modules. I liked this one so much that I decided to build 2 more modules. Now you'll notice in the picture here I actually designed the 2 other modules a little bit differently. I used pocket hole technology on those. Just wanted to see if that was a little bit more simple to work with, and it was, except for one thing. I had to put the pocket holes on the outside of it instead of putting them on the inside because there just wasn't room for me to get in there with the drill to set the screws in place. So I have to put up with that, but again, that's going to be hidden from view when it's set up for viewing at a show or whatever. So I really like the way these modules turned out. They look really cool. The 12 1/8 by 9 3/8 inches. And here, the last picture, I just decided to set all three of them next to each other, just kind of get a feel for what they're going to look like. And I really like this. I'm kind of getting hooked on this T-Trak. All right, we got all the tracks out. We got some tools, and we got some all kinds of stuff, except, oh no, no track nails. Oh no. So now what? I guess we got to go to Hobby Lobby now, and we'll pick up some track nails and, of course, some other things. Yes, I got 180 trees along with it, and for this kind of a price, yeah, you better believe I'm going to scoop up every one of them they had for that kind of money. So you can never have enough trees on an N Scale model railroad, or any railroad for that matter. Anyway, let's get on with the construction part of this and see how it goes. Okay, here we are at the module once again. As you can see, I've got the first track, the one that goes on the front of the module, already nailed down and glued down. I've got it exactly 1.5 inches from the front edge of the module to the outer edge of the ballast on that, according to T-Trak specs. And going to the second one, you can see I have the pin vise stuck into one of the holes there, and I don't advise doing this, but I just did it for the picture part of it. And there's a very, very tiny drill bit in that to kind of drill a countersink in there to drive the track nails into. Otherwise, you might end up bending them and really screwing things up, so you really don't want to do that. And in order to get the 33 millimeters between the tracks, I actually have a little short piece, as you can see here, attached to the end of it to make sure I'm exactly 33 millimeters apart. And I did the same thing on the other end. A little short piece of double track really comes in handy. And another way you can do this too is pretty reliable, is using the Kato Unitrack the re-railer piece, this little blue piece here. And if you ever looked at one of those that has little notches on the side, that's for setting your tracks up exactly 33 millimeters apart for your main lines and sidings and so forth. So that comes in extremely handy for getting your spacing just right between the tracks. And as you can see, I've got a couple track nails ready to go here already. So what I do here is I actually lay a little bead of glue alongside each side of the ballast on these, and then I make sure that the glue is underneath the track, well pushed in there, and then I push the track nails down to hold it in place. The glue alone should be enough to hold the track in place, but I'm going to leave the nails in there anyway, just as a little added insurance that the tracks aren't going to come out or move around on me. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I did as far as laying the tracks down. Okay, in the couple seconds that you guys were away, I took the liberty of laying another pair of tracks on a second module, and this is a demonstration of why we have to have the 33 millimeter spacing on the main line, the T-Trak standard. It's so when you take two modules and put them together, they will actually match up. And this applies to any T-Trak module. I can actually take these modules to any T-Trak event, and they'll connect into the layouts with no issues whatsoever. It's the way the T-Trak standard is designed. So this is what they look like when they're hooked together, and the gap in between there is fairly normal. I've seen it on almost any T-Trak module layout that I've seen. There's always going to be a little gap in between because the tracks actually hang over the edge by about 1 millimeter on each end. So there's just that little bit of play in there, and it gives you just enough room so when it comes time to take them apart, you don't have to wedge in between there. You can actually just kind of twist one, pull them apart. All right, tracks are all laid down. Now it's time to get down and do a little bit of painting. Now what I did is I took the painter's tape and covered up the tracks on both modules that had tracks on them, and made sure I had a good solid covering on it so we don't want that paint leaking up and getting on the ballast of the track. Mixed up in a kind of an earthy looking tone of paint there. I'm not sure exactly what I would call that, but this is what it looks like when the first module got painted. Looks pretty decent. You can really see where the nail holes are in it now from when I tacked it down. And by comparison, this is the module that was not painted yet. And you can definitely see the wood grain through the paint, but that's not a big deal because it's going to get all covered with scenery anyway. So the unpainted module next to the painted module, I think I'll take the painted one over the unpainted one just about any day. So I actually got smart in a moment of rare brilliance on my part. I decided the third module to paint that one before putting the tracks onto it. Imagine that. The wisdom of that move was just unbelievable. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, all three modules are painted now and ready to go. And we're going to move our concentration on to the one module that we're going to work on here and show you what I kind of came up with for an idea on it. I found this little building. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to use it or not, but I looked at it. The more I looked at it, the more I kind of liked it with that little extra garage on the back of it. So that's the building we're going to use for the layout on this thing, and kind of thinking about what I want to do with it. And now it came time for me to put down a little bit of the scenic material, some ground covering, and boy, did that transform things on this thing. Really looks neat this way. And I really like this shot down the tracks. I don't know why, but for some reason this shot down the tracks really impresses me. All right, once again, it's been just a couple seconds for you guys, but a couple hours for me as I was contemplating and running different ideas through my mind and trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do it. And this is what I came up with for the little module. I like the idea of an angled road on there. And that building, I think, is going to be the only structure I'm going to put on there. The rest is going to be all trees and foliage and stuff like that. I'm picturing that as being like some kind of a general store out in kind of the middle of no place. So I'm going to set it back from the road just a little bit with a parking area in front of it and a little gravel driveway running all the way back to that garage, back out to the main road. And, of course, the grade crossings and stuff that I put in there. I really like the view of this from this angle, even though it's not finished and there's quite a bit of work left to do on there. Quite a bit of little modeling going on in this little tiny space, so really happy with it. So in just two short parts, you've seen the whole little module come from this, just a little framework on the top of the table saw, to this. A not quite finished, but looking pretty doggone good little T-Trak module. So that's going to wrap it up for this little mini-series here on the T-Trak module, at least for this portion of it anyway. So we'll talk again real soon. And of course, as always, until we talk again, I think you guys know what comes next, don't you? Yes, whatever it is in life you do, keep on doing what it is you do.